Fuck. Bumblecott. Hello, chat. I'm just a coffee boy this morning. Well, I'm fine. My sides are fucking itchy. In any capacity. Hello. Welcome, 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 welcome to the existence of some of the wildest shit one could ever talk about. Love on her. How are you guys doing today? Ow. Ow. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day to be neighbors. Could you be mine? Would you be mine? It's a beautiful day to run this game. I'm looking the same to hit the frame. Could you be tired and baby mine? I'm a blind kind of I'm sublime rhyme. Under 20 minutes. Solo notes. This is a single segment. This is solo. Primordial, the hardest difficulty. Damage to Manibus, which must be through Primordial only. And Forsaken in solo without being critically injured. Most YouTubers, Just a Girl, get exposed for the abuse because when they get a handle on power, it is, I already have. It is expectant that most have never really truly handled it properly. And a lot of that comes down to most people, when they get power, they never really understand how to properly structure that power because they never actually have somebody to teach them guidance on how leadership should work. In a lot of cases, actually, most of those people, when they learn about leadership skills, learn about the leadership skills from the position of video games. Games are a form of structure and layer of society. So, the reason I use the behavior of people and once humans so much is that society has strict rules that are enforced by social contract. The social contract of leadership effectively requires a person to take responsibility and accountability for their actions, as well as being capable of accepting that that accountability does not begin and end when you don't like a person. It begins and ends where the importance of your actions are most considered. So, you can't, for example, jump into an argument or provoke an argument and then pretend that a person is not being reasonable when they address things you do, things you say, ways you behave, and how that behavior from you affects other people around you. This is basic shit. Like, really basic shit. But most people, they're not used to being to the consequence of behaving with other people. The most common thing most people are used to doing or being involved in is they're used to being a person who's a part of the group who directly makes fun of or attacks a person. They're not capable of handling and understanding that you can't just tee off against somebody and, haha, it's acceptable because we don't like that person. Technically, that just happened inside of the game chat, but I'm not giving them the energy If a person tries to spurg at me, I block them, and I'm continuing to ignore them. And if they try to go to my stream, I'm going to ignore them and block them and remove them without incident or reaction, because we're at the point now where when it comes to online video games, people, because there's so many games that have online interactions, some people, they've never been punched in the mouth, is the nice way to put it. The short and simple and nice way to put it. People are not used to someone ignoring their clear attempts to make them uncomfortable. It makes them feel unsafe. That's why when a person is, quote, too nice, toxically positive, it can be a thing that turns off a lot of people to make them think, oh no, there's something wrong with him. But at the same time, the basic problem when it comes to power abuse is that a lot of people just don't know what the fuck to do when they have that kind of power. No? They have no inner moral guidelines. Because the job of a content creator on the internet, ultimately comes down to, you are an internet court jester. That's the easiest way to put it. And most people can't handle that reality, because handling that reality in that way requires them to understand that it is not an open and shut case. It's not something that you can just ignore. This will be something that comes up when we start the coverage of Mr. Beast. I am probably going to skip around in them, if not just go to the second video entirely, but I have both hit pieces, air quote, on Jimmy in front of me. Because last night, Jay actually saw some of it and was telling me about it while I was still gaming with her before we watched Wolverine and Deadpool. But it is a common fact that the influence of power draws people to it as a vacuum. And in that power vacuum, people get tempted by that power. Usually you can tell what kind of a personality a person has when you give them power over something. And you give them the assurance that as long as most of the things they say and do are never communicated in a venue where they will ever be truly held to account, by that I mean, if they were said, you can do anything you want, and in this place, around these people, no one will expose you, more than likely, the majority of people would take that deal and become the worst versions of themselves. It's one of the things that's common about acting. You think that the beautiful people that you see on your screen are good people, and that's why they're where they are in life. But in truth, reality is stranger than fiction. And some people who would have never expected to have a bitchy side to them, have a bitchy side to them. Now that doesn't mean, for example, a person is a bitch because you call them such. It means a person who, for social reasons, knows they're supposed to behave one way, but they're truly, personally, another. They can get away with the biggest crimes possible, known to man, as long as they're willing to put their contempt in an easy-to-digest way, where it is expected to be an okay take. So, for this particular game, with some of the people who are in this server, as I, again, gave them the chance to go without behaving like this, and I have now reblocked them, because they have decided to try and open up drama to the chat room, instead of trying to answer the questions that were asked and being on topic. If they were given the ability to press a button, they would press that button to hurt you, to hurt me, to anybody they didn't like. And that's really what the behavior of the regular modern person is in this time period, amongst this era of content creation. Maybe some of your favorites, some of the worst ones, like Aaron Hansen, have transformed into a kind of content creator that either they realized that they were making things out of spite and wanted to be better, or upon realizing they were making shit out of spite, chose to not to be better and continue carrying a permanent torch that directly benefits nobody but technically themselves and maybe 5 other people in their purview. And even with that in mind. From celebrities to your favorite grocer who packs your bags at the grocery store. Good people and good persons where money can be made off of socialization is common. It's one of the most contentious and cantankerous things that's had throughout content creation, that's had throughout entertainment, that's had throughout business. And it will always be a factor, because power abhors a vacuum. There's always going to be the implication that a person should be in power, that a person should receive power, that a person should reach for power, that it's good to feed your inner elephant, it's good to feed your inner beast. And ultimately, if you really want to benefit this on the era of what it is, congratulations by the way, on the era of what it is, those who are the most scumlord. I tried to use an example the other night to the degree of trying to compare this with Destiny. I think I already deleted that chart. Yeah, I did. Let's see if I can pull it up from my VOD. See here. Can I pull this from my VOD? I think it was before I had to cut it because my internet was fucking with me. Okay, got the 6 link, or rather 6 socket.
You don't have any.
Well, that. Here we go. You fiend it.
Like,
Looks like some insidiously stupid napkin math, but this will work. There you go. This is not the full graph size, but in content creation, this is more or less how people behave. You've got casual viewers, you've got influencers, you've got content creators. And then, of course, you have the actual knowledge check that you need to have to understand particular things about a person. And then, of course, the further that you reach down past the levels of influence to where you can say a person is definitely cooked and mentally disturbed when it comes to content creation, to the point that they are viewing blood sports, you know, the darknet / KF zone, but KF is not on the darknet, but they are kind of pseudo on the darknet because they use the Tor browser, you know, so that the people who need to go to the website or are frequenting the website are the correct kind of people who would go there, not just random people passing through to try and pull information from it and then reinvent drama to justify content creation for content's sake. People who exist on this spectrum, there's a mental check that you have to meet. Hello, Ebony. That you have to meet in order to jump that line. From going from a casual viewer to an influencer can simply be you saw some shit, you read some shit, you heard some shit, and because you read and communicated and saw and did some shit, you're more or less fine. Like, there's no big issue, there's no big deal. You're not losing anything. You're not harmed in any particular way. You didn't cause harm. You didn't participate in harm. When you have to jump from being an influencer to a content creator, there are going to be multitudes of things that are going to happen as a part of your knowledge check. And a lot of this comes down to leadership skills, where you have to navigate the social problems that come up with influence around other people, as well as influence around yourself. Now, the biggest problem with this, and this is what most people struggle with, is that leadership is not something that you can just put yourself into. You can't say, I'm the leader and now this is how we do things. You can individually to yourself, but not with other people. So ultimately, when it comes down to it, part of what Jester's saying is more or less the truth of the matter. Because, let's use the example of Mr. Beast, which I'm not going to start the content there, but let's use the example of Mr. Beast. Jimmy is supposed to be the mastermind and leader of the Mr. Beast brand. Chris, now Ava Tyson, after their transition, socially, is a person who is considered a black sheep amongst that group. And everything that matters about that has to do with now Jimmy himself and his capacity to be a leader in that. He's supposed to be the person who's the front-facing individual. Before, the problem was, you guys hate Mr. Beast because look at all this help he's doing, and you leftists are mad that he's giving money to people and helping in the way that you say billionaires should use their money. But the clear case problem that exists with Mr. Beast's content, for example, is that there's a particular risk of harm. Before this news came out, there was little to no true concern of that harm. But with the addition of this harm, they started behaving in a way where now the question of his leadership comes into question. Because if a person does something as a member of your organization at a lower level, and it reflects poorly to you on the top level, one of those first checks that happens to a content creator is, what do you do when that happens? Now me, I'm the kind of person that I don't like to deal with conflict unless I have to. And it's not because I'm conflict adverse, it's because I go scorched earth every time. Because I don't believe in mercy. I don't believe in mercy, not because I don't believe in mercy for me or other people, but because there's a choice that a person makes to do things. And a lot of what it comes down to, and it's not mercy to the public, it's mercy between an action between a person and a person. Like social mercy amongst a group is one thing. A person to a person making an action and a decision and a choice, like trying to accost you with a knife or an axe, that is a choice that I don't forgive and I don't give mercy for that kind of thing. Same way I see the action of a person trying to hurt you or harm you in any way, in any shape or way or capacity is the same thing. And the reason why is because they get exposed for these kinds of things because a lot of their moral systems are not properly shaped. These content creators, these YouTubers, these influencers that get exposed over and over and over again. Now, for most of them, it's not so much being exposed as it is updating them on it, where you firmly move somebody from the status, referring back to the chart, from influencer to content creator. If, say, tomorrow, Horror were to come out with a tell-all about how I do business behind the scenes, how I react based on that choice colors any action I could have moving forward about anything I do ever. Because the way that people treat information is that the more information that exists about you, the more people immediately attempt to write you off. This is actually perfectly amenable to the behavior of people who act like this in this particular server once human. Because this is a social video game. So, the social hierarchy, as it is, dictates that a person who wants to have power needs to control that mass. What's the easiest way to harass somebody? Oh, let's make it a game in the chat, as I set the shit up. What do you think is the easiest way to turn a person against you? Or to have people turn against a person? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, let's play a game, chat. What do you think is the easiest way to turn a group of people against another person? No, that's too easy, Fatal. No, that's too easy. I'm not talking like a social mob. But talking shit behind the scenes is a good example. Backsass, backmouth, rude, snide comments that are said because you believe that because you're in the shadow, which is to say, you're doing it from the view of where people can see you actively, that it'll be something that will be gotten away with. Turning a person against them, messing with their family, yes, but that's not the degree in which I mean. If I'll rephrase the question. Making yourself a threat's good. Lies is good. I'll rephrase the question. If your goal is to destroy someone's life, what do you think is the easiest way to turn people that see somebody as a good person into a bad person? The word starts with the letter E. Slander is good. Manner of hearsay, that's halfway close to the most accurate and most effective answer. While you're doing that, we'll set up this. I don't think so. You lie like a motherfucker behind the scenes and convince him you're a dick. That's useful. That's definitely part of it. Call and response is not our strong suit, chat. But that's okay. Entrapment? I mean, technically half the exposements. I'll end the charade. The word is expose. If you want to destroy somebody's credibility the way that it has for Mr. Beast, or any other person who's been considered a lovely figure, and then you learned they were a horrible person, you expose them. You bring to light things that they don't want people to know publicly, that if they know it publicly, it destroys the optics around themselves, the things they associate themselves with, any brands that they happen to do with, and effectively makes them a toxic person to touch. That's the fastest way you want to destroy somebody, if you want to do so through representation. Right, I'm going to stop this. This is done. Fertilizer's done. The game? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's easier to be able to destroy somebody. I forget that everyone's digging on a devil level else you thought was unique. It isn't that. Isn't that we are bad at call and response? It's a guessing game. Chat moves slowly, give people a hint, starts with an E. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But the fastest and easiest way to attack a person is to expose them. It's to cancel them. You think somebody's a good person, you expose them, they are supposedly a bad person behind the scenes, and then the way that they behave after they've been exposed, the facade drops, the mask slips, as they say. That's the easiest way to destroy a person. In the particular example that I'm using here, Mr. Beast is somebody who has been put to that line and exposed for what he's chosen to say or do or behave. And this now leads to his entire brand being called into order, because the Mr. Beast brand is based off of and built off of Jimmy's behavior, his philanthropist actions, the goodwill that he's ministered and fostered, not just through business, but also through talking to other people, working with other people, and dealing with other people, and how the public, and the important part about this is public, displays of his actions have gone. It looks and feels and sounds a lot different when a person says something publicly versus when a person says something privately and then references it off the record. So, this is actually pretty good to lead into the first standard, but we'll cover this story first. It's not a very big one. Ready at Dawn Studio shut down by Meta. They have gone the way of the dino, as most are. Not to be disbelieved or unexpected. Very, very quick story. Boop, boop, bop. Bing, bada, boop, boop. Bah, bah. Wrong one. Bah. Studio getting shut down. They made games. They worked with former Naughty Dog and Blizzard developers, located in Irvine, California. Worked on virtual reality titles. Basically, exactly what you expected to happen, because who the fuck cares about that? But moving to the point that I was about to use, there's a concept. There's a concept that has to do with this, from what we were talking about yesterday. And what it has to do with what we were talking about yesterday was the idea when I was covering and talking about Six Hexenhammer's content. His particular reporting about material being that the reaction to Kamala Harris effectively doing what she's been doing was do not let her hide, force her into debates, because people do not know enough about her. And because people don't know enough about Kamala Harris, if they use what is called the basement strategy, which is basically never go out in public, don't get seen doing anything, do content that offends nobody, or is, quote, boring enough or passive enough that people who are looking for something to entertain them will effectively not tune in. So you can get away with things because, hey, you're not doing anything wrong. It's stuff that's being done in plain sight. And people not being interested in it is not the same thing as you being an evil person, right? Etc., etc., blase, blase. When you do something like trying to expose people, which is what cancel culture and the struggle session sets to do within a Marxist system of attitudes, concepts, and socialist beliefs. For any person who's unfamiliar with the Communist Manifesto, it is inside of Chapter 2, at the bottom of the page, after all the other texts, in a 10-point plan and a final paragraph, that the job of people in the masses is to expose the secrets of a state or of a entity and being, and strip from those who have to give to the have-nots. Not to enrich people and to bring them up, but to tear them down. The system of expose, where you slander, attack, mock, harass, tar, feather, and shame people into obscurity, is to make the divine mundane, and then make the mundane mortal. Because the social aspect of seeing people who are successful and powerful lends you to think naturally that that person is to be trusted. Because, hey, why are they successful and powerful? Why are they in a disposition to do these things if they are to be trusted for what they do? And ultimately, at the end of the day, the biggest problem with this is that since most people are not on that level, and what I mean by on that level, referring to the chart again, if people are not at that position to understand, hello, Bolster. If people are not in that position to understand the difference of being a casual person to being at least somebody who creates content or looks at content and gives their opinion on it, to be involved, to know the details of most things, to everything they need to know on that topic, whether they choose to be an autodidact and learn immediately a focused burst of information over time, or if they are an omniglot, or an encyclopedic kind of mind that has a bunch of information on a bunch of different topics, that when they start specializing in their speech, they are indifferent from an autistic child hyper-focused about their hobbies. The biggest power difference and the biggest shift of that particular perspective and potential is when you have to actually hone in on that concept, because it's a nebulous thing to grab onto. You can't call somebody a bad person because you don't like them because somebody said something bad to you, or somebody said something particularly mean or offhanded to you in a video game, because behavior and accountability on that capacity is attributed to consistent behavior. If a person's acting out, that's different than in every single time you talk to that person, talk about that person, or see something about that person behaves in a way that is consistent to someone who is looking to do something. So, when a person, say, socially stalks themselves on social media, they Google themselves frequently, and every time they see somebody speaking poorly of them, they basically go off on that person. This is what most people would never turn their eye at, because, hey, why would we need to talk about this person? They're clearly upset and molding. They're coping and seething. Why would I ever care about this person? And yet, this behavior is actually probably the most common thing you're going to see in celebrities. Because celebrities are used to, once they've made it, once they've blown up, and they have the platform, they're used to being rewarded and showered with that. Especially in the parasociality of content creation, of actual content creators and streamers that are occupying the space of influencer. Most of them don't do anything. They don't make anything, they don't build anything, they exist. That's, in my mind, what I call an influencer. Most people who are content creators, they're the ones that are trying to do things to entertain you. That's why there's a difference between people who make videos and who react to those videos without making any videos of their own. That doesn't mean that if you do one or the other, it moves you from that category. But it's a clear user versus giver mindset. And to tie this back to where we started, back up to here, when we had talked about being exposed to terrible people. A lot of it is a lot of information that would have originally never been exposed coming to light, because somebody either finally decided to tell the truth, or somebody who was tired of seeing bad people win blew the whistle. This is no different than a whistle being blown on a corporation. It just so happens to be that, in that perspective, we care more about the individual than we do about the corporate. And of course, why wouldn't we? Most corporations seek to make money, and they do not see the prime human individual. In fact, in most cases, it is those content creators and streamers that expose those corporations. But the problem with the expose of the corporations, I'm like fucking Mr. Wizard right now. I'm like an autistic, nerdy Mr. Wizard from fucking Proud Family. The problem with this perspective and this approach is that it makes you extremely jaded to the world. Now, there was a period in time where I used to have that perspective about shit. I have a lot of skewed perspectives about a lot of things. Now, that doesn't mean that those things are true, but it means that I have a self-absorbed confirmation bias that passively runs as a filter. But one of the things you learn when you deal with this is that you have to have a secondary primary filter to catch whatever would originally come out of your mouth, or that you would do, to say to yourself, now, maybe I'm just being deluded. Maybe I'm seeing this differently than they are. Maybe I should come from this from a different angle and try to connect with them, because human connection is probably one of the most important things that goes into understanding this concept. Because everybody likes human connection. Everybody likes to have a group. Everybody likes to do a thing. And most people would reach out rather than pull back. Most people who pull back, that's trauma, go to therapy. For some people who reach out and they only want to reach out when they can control it, that is a trauma response to having reached out before and being burned. You get burned enough, you just stop reaching out entirely. A crying child will stop crying for its mother if its cries go unheard, to the point that they become despondent and unemotional. Because the first element of that social connection actually starts with a proper, nurtured, mothering environment. And then the learning structure of rules for that society that you live in by the social contract that goes unspoken but is enforced by your parents is then taught to you by your father and the father figures of society. Because technically, the engagement rules, the way that you behave in society, is set by the women but upheld by the men. And so, over the last few, I would say off the top of my head, 15 years. The last 15 years of content creation, from news to social media to microblogger to entrepreneurial renaissance men and women, no matter how big or how small, they get exposed for the things that in a normal corporate environment is a nothing burger. And the problem with this element of that nothing burger sense is that ultimately it's a nothing burger not because these are things that, bro, why do you care? It's that they're nothing burgers because they are the thing that happens in that society, in that group. That's what it comes down to. It has less to do with a person.
So let's go over a specific...
Oops. Too loud. Too loud. There we go. It has less to do with a person being an evil individual and more to do with understanding the environment you're in. You don't go into a corporate boardroom and expect people to care about your feelings, for one. But this is less to do with that, and it's more to do with the ethics of how you behave. You do not have to make a lemonade stand that has turrets that stick outwards, that immediately start targeting a customer, telling them, buy the lemonade or get disintegrated. So when people engage in certain ways, they usually base that level of, it's not so much nurture versus nature. The social aspect of you jumping yourself into the environment can be nurture versus nature. But when you're actually in the space, when you're actually existing as a person floating through society, it's more learning the rules of the area in which you are in. If you get involved in a world of business and you expect people to basically act as though social justice should dominate the politics of a boardroom, you're asking to see the worst elements of society start to run amok. Because those elements of society, as you start dialing down and dialing in, start to affect those that are willing to do what it takes to grab power. As the saying goes, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. When you control the engagement tools of how one reaches the lever of power, you can also lop off the hand of any person who reaches for that lever. So, let's use a visual example of Resident Evil Village when he gets his hand cut off as a visual metaphor for this. Resident Evil lever hand cut. Hand cut off scene. Oh my fucking god. I just wanted to find a picture of his hand getting cut off and you motherfuckers got porn out here? My god. Why? Why? Why did somebody make a porn mod of that? Y'all out here for real, for real. Alright, here we go. Surprised? No. Disappointed? Yes. So, the way that this works is that anytime you engage in anything that can potentially enrich your life, unless there are tools in place to protect you from this happening to you, metaphorically or literally, you do certain things and you behave in an environment certain ways to enrich yourself, and you are at the mercy of the benevolence of whoever it is you have to deal with. When it comes to the world of business, and I'm going to be serious about this because this is fair, in the world of business, anything goes. It might feel like it shouldn't because, oh my god, you can't do that to people. But they can, and they will, because that's what they believe in, because anything goes. We're talking about the kind of things that can create the GDP of a country and allow a person to do something like rig an election for several years running. The shit happening in Venezuela is a perfect case example of this. When you have your hand on the lever of power, you don't want to let go, because power abhors a vacuum. Power likes to be wielded. Power likes to be used. Power likes to not only be wielded and be used, but to be admonished, and it also loves to be deified. A person who finds themselves in a position over somebody else has to actively take steps to not give themselves chances to abuse it. To abuse them, to abuse the situation, to abuse the person, to abuse the element of what provides the opportunity to do it, and to not create more opportunities to create that abuse of power. And it's this problem with content creation that is the biggest problem amongst content creators, because influencers, video makers, streamers, and people who work in that business sense do not give a shit at the end of the day on a general level about morality, because the way that you should behave is all based on morals. And when you're talking about the world of streamer business, that's business. So, when I cover the example the other day, I forget exactly the day now. They're all blending together. When we covered Kai Cenat in the example of his friend being accused of being a pedophile because he's like a 2-year difference between a girl that he was talking to at the time, and it was literally a repeat of the Call Me Carson situation of 1917. A 2-year age gap, but people are calling somebody a pedophile. This problem comes from people overly abusing the social caste that came from labeling somebody as a bad person. And this problem, the social caste of labeling somebody as a bad person, ultimately comes down to, I want to abuse what other people are using in order to have a position of power over you instead of treating you like a human being. So, using the hand cut as a metaphor, you navigate through life and somebody figures out it would be really easy to be able to take opportunities to and from you by treating you like garbage because, hey, I see you trying to take something that I want. Slice! Or, let's use the dating market. I see you making better choices upon how you're supposed to be able to manage yourself to be a better partner. And you just want somebody to love. Slice! Let's take philanthropy. You're a person, and the one with philanthropy, this is what made me eventually not want to work in government anymore. You're a person who works in philanthropy. You want to create shelters and businesses and programs and food kitchens and food shelves and library outposts where people can be able to take the time to better educate themselves and be able to learn the things one needs to learn in order to break the catch-22 of how can I get a job and receive experience despite not having the experience. And having, in most cases, especially for the lower class of society, those who don't have the time to fucking read and learn because they are industry level factory line workers, or they are the people slaving through running the majority of the society that we live in, not being able to take the chances to move up in society and make a better life for themselves, at least to the level of the lower middle class. They don't have to be rich. They ain't gotta take vacations to Cabo, but they can go visit Minnesota. They can go look at the Grand Rapids. They can go hiking through the Grand Canyon. They can take a day trip to go see the grandparents at Niagara Falls. And all they gotta do is just put themselves out there and, quote, lead with an open heart. And then people smell the money opportunity and see the shit you're doing and slice! This one's extremely heinous. Because then you start talking about government officials that see it as an opportunity to embezzle money. Your money. My money. This cycle is a social nature of an animalistic desire. And it takes learning actively how to do it. And that's just learning the concept. Imagine trying to lead this to somebody. Imagine trying to do it without guidance on how to better treat people. There's a reason that the most common thing when it comes to leadership is that you don't just put a person in a leadership position immediately. In order to lead, you must follow. I used to not like this phrase. Because for me, I didn't like people putting barriers in my way. It's actually very apt to Once Human because it's time-locked content. And we live in a time period of social gamers that do not want to play with other people, but do want to play the newest thing because of the fear of missing out. The problem is that, and what ultimately creates the issue of leadership, is that people don't actually have many opportunities to learn how to be a leader. It's the effort and essence of trial and error. I think society has a serious problem and needs to have a serious discussion about allowing people to have mistakes and to make mistakes. And that people are not perfect. Because there is an air of perfection and an expectation of perfection that adorns every social topic. It is now noon. That adorns every social topic that can ever be discussed, including the one we're currently talking about now. Because we're spending time talking about this before we get into the content. Because this is actually very important to the news stories we're about to cover. When you are a public-facing content creator, the hardest thing to work with, is dealing with people having immediate feedback response to you. Because it doesn't matter if you're the nicest person in existence. Everybody can have a bad day. And one person taking you having a bad day and taking it out of context and using that to traumatize other people about a version of you that doesn't exist, to paint a picture about you, and you not being able to defend yourself is the most unfair fucking thing in existence. And most people, when this happens to them, throw caution and abandon to the wind. They could have been the nicest person, they could have been the greatest content creator, but because somebody chose to troll them, they're now evil. They become the worst version of Keemstar. That's not to say Keemstar is a horrible person, but he's also, somebody who's willing to apparently fuck Tony C out of money. And that's on top of the news of Lolcow Live basically being a scripted show akin to, ironically enough, and I hate the comparison, professional wrestling. The element of kayfabe is not cool there. But back to the point, and moving forward. In my opinion, it comes down to how people in society set their morals. We respect people securing the bag over people having good morals. There are people who would rather be famous than be content. Because hey, at least I'm famous. I'll never truly be out of money. And in this choice that you're given, because it's not a single test. It's not, I resisted temptation once and now I'm a good person. It's a series of decisions. It's akin to an idea of Gnostic levels of possession, actually. Carl, what the fuck does that mean? Rather than a demon comes up out of the ground, it overshadows you, it possesses you, and starts wreaking havoc with your body, your voice, and your mind, it is instead a series of choices. A series of asks and yeses that lead you further and further down a path of temptation. Which makes perfect sense when you actually think about how does a person go from somebody who could be a force for good and becomes a literal bastion, a literal hollow bastion of evil. It starts with choices. It all comes down to how do you treat yourself. Not how you treat other people. How do you treat yourself? Who are you? How do you treat yourself? Who are you? Who are you at the core of your being? Who are you when nobody sees you? How do you carry yourself when nobody sees you? Do you do things for attention? Or do you do them because they're funny? And you think afterwards, let me turn this camera on. All of these things are at the core value of leadership. Because a leader isn't, it's not a class change. Leadership is not a class change. You don't go from a follower to a supreme commander. That's not how any of things in life works. It's a skill. Like any skill building activity and any skill building design, it is a thing that you do over time. I did not get all this stuff or do all these things that these are associated with, or all the accolades, like things, Such as this personal signature that's on my Taco Belmont sign that came from one of the bigger influences on making me into who I am, therefore why it hangs on my wall behind me, that brings you into this. All of this is based on the choices you personally make. Because, despite the fact that this, along with the Pokemon first movie poster, the tickets to a county fair that was a turnabout for me making better choices for myself and trying to not only prioritize my own personal happiness, but not being a people pleaser. Two, becoming somebody who can get involved in a relationship and is getting cards from my partner that is signed from my partner and my child, or from my family members, my immediate blood family members, from my teacher, my mother, my godfather, to having pictures taken with me with said child, which I'm not going to show you on camera right now. All of these things are choices, and you make these choices because you want to make them. Now, there are influencing factors that can lead you down that road, like money. That's too easy. You add money to the mix for most people, and most people cannot resist it because we live in a world where your world and your outcomes are based on money. When you're struggling, when you're really down on your luck and you have no way to secure that, hey, can I get help? Can I get help getting a job? Or like, bro, I might go homeless? And you end up doing the meme. I say doing the meme, but you have to really come to terms with like, damn, I never thought that I'd be in a position like this. I might actually lose my house. And you have to ask people to help you. Most people are going to look at you with disgust, because how did you ever put yourself in a position for that to happen to you? This is probably like the most common fucking example that's ever discussed to, especially when it comes to the dating world with women. It's probably the quickest thing that is justified. And it's not to say that it's unfair, but the way that it's used is used as a, if he wanted to, he would, rather than he's trying to and he's asking you to help. It's probably one of the most annoying things, but that's a segue. Staying on topic, you have to make the choice to be a leader. And it ultimately comes with learning how to follow somebody else that you trust the leadership skills of. Because you take things from their leadership style and you insert it into your own. And ultimately, without the involvement of money, evil people do things because they want to do them. They do them because they're easy. They do them because it requires a moral boundary that people are more than happy to cross. It is a decision that is made out of pragmatism, simply because they don't have to answer to, one, a higher power, if it's in their belief system, or they don't have to deal with the problem of social common shame because they happen to do business in a sector of society where they're not publicly facing. So it's not something that they have to concern themselves with when they're in the middle of doing the shit. It's only something that is something they confront when somebody decides to expose them for it. And for most of those things that you could expose a person for, if somebody were to come out with information to confirm or deny in the positive or in the affirmative or in the negative, that I am, in fact, a secret wet work operative that has yet to be activated and is currently on one of his deactivation phases before I get activated by the government again, there would probably be people in the chat room that'd be like, I didn't know that Carl was a literal paid assassin. Bro, that's crazy! I remember this man spurting about a man who was human, and now he's on the front page assassinating a foreign world leader. Bro, that's wild. Something like that is not really going to change most people's perceptions unless you come to a kind of understanding about a person's social skills. And really, that fall off, that up and down and end and all that shit really just comes from how much you know a person. And when it comes to like social media content creators, you don't know everything about them. You only know a version of them that they show you in these four corners of the fucking screen. From here to here to here to here, and whatever comes through on this microphone. That's all you will know about me if I don't put anything else out there in the world. That's why I feel so comfortable in myself on camera. I ain't got shit to hide. Because anything that people could expose, look, that goes on only Carl's. The only things that you could be able to expect and be acceptable to try and hide has to do with whether or not that's something people care about. Ultimately, the problem when it comes to content creators specifically and leadership skills and getting exposed, a lot of them do shit that you would rather not know about. And it's because it's easy. It's fucking easy. It's just easy. Let's use Pokimane. Pokimane's a perfect case example. How many times has she fucking lit up people on the internet just because she felt like it? How many times does she harass and mock people at her mercy? Deleting content, striking shit, making fun of them to their face, mocking people who are in her audience that said, "Bro, I only got $7 to pay for your bags of cookies. I don't care about the white people brand. Like, I want some Chip Ahoy's. I can't even get a big giant package of Ahoy's compared to what I'm paying for you." How many times has she done shit and people basically bend the knee to her every time? That's social power. That's social influence. She's in a position of power where she can decide whether you get to have a career or not. This kind of element of control is what people don't like, and it's why people usually call them out. But of course, you've got things like the female perspective of, hey, they're just a woman. Like, bro, she's just existing. That can help to protect that. Which is also the same reason why businesses and corporations like employing women, because people are not likely to blow up at women in public if that is being recorded or is in a public situation, because you can easily be able to paint somebody as a bad person if you release that footage. But I'll use another example, Nick Rekieta. Nick Rekieta is a really bad example. And I say bad example, and he's a perfect example. Because how many people would have thought that his wife and him were not only one, inverse pineapple enthusiasts, if you know, you know, and how many people would have guessed that his children were around him and his wife while they were doing illegal and copious amounts of party drugs, as well as hard drugs? How many people would have guessed that those children were getting into that supply and were going to test positive for the levels of cocaine that were equivalent to an active user? Therein lies my point. The general problem is, it's too easy when you're considered one of the popular people to get away with harm. When you're on the lower end, like fucking Lord and Lady Rackets, it changes the entire perception. It changes the entire argument. It changes the entire scenario. Because we understand this about politics, we understand this about business. I'd say we as in society, amongst those with actual functioning frontal lobes, get this. We understand it about business, we understand it about public servants and public service, we understand it about acts of kindness, we understand it about the dating world, but this disconnect between entertainers and people who make money from that existence of their entertainment factor, existing as an entity, not just existing and performing on a stage as a performer, as a part of like a group or an act or stand-up comedian. They make money from existence. There are people who cannot connect these things, because to understand that would break your brain. So when you said, can they just stop being fucking exposed? Like, bro, I can't keep a track of it. What the fuck? If you knew half the shit that most people do on the dark web, you would start hating entire sectors of business, let alone the entertainment industry. Now, it'd be better if those people were to be exposed over time. It'd be better if that were the way. Literally, it'd be better for society. Somebody comes out with a fucking WikiLeaks-styled YouTuber, Twitch, Kick-styled drop of every content creator that ever exists with the accurate perfection of an archon and a higher fucking throne that has been taking notes about you as your guardian angels all your life, and just drop that shit on the timeline. It'd be better that way, but we can't do it that way. So instead, we have to find the people who should be trusted. You gotta find the content creators that can be trusted. You gotta find the groups that can be trusted. You gotta find the organizations that can be trusted, and slowly build up that repertoire to know people that, hey, they might have some secrets of their own that they might not talk about, or they might have some personal shit between themselves and somebody else that other people will never need to know, because that's between them and that person, or them and that group. But I, from the outside, looking at this looks like a real fine, good establishment. I think I'd like to become a part of this. Because part of it is about charisma. You know? Can you win people over? But ultimately, it really just comes down to, like, how pretty a person is, how well-spoken they can be when they handle a problem in a situation, their perception and the ongoing perception that they have at the time, especially, and this is a very big one, with the past work that they've done. This is the literally who factor. And how they carry themselves moving from event to event to event to event to event. Using myself as an example, with the amount of times I've had to make use of the behavior from other people as well as myself from Once Human, you'd think I was a Spurg. You'd think I was an also-ran that was obsessed with controlling other people. Realistically, I'm just a guy trying to experience the world, bro. Like, I do other things outside of it. At the same time, while I've had my controversies in the past, and I've definitely made mistakes between people that I've either directly employed, or rather, I was victimized by situations that happened. And then I did not make very good choices based on how I should have moved and reacted in those situations, either out of experience or out of irrational emotional response. Carrying myself forward and moving myself forward, I'd say for the most part I'm doing fine. And that's only because I've had the background to learn those skills and how to learn to think on my feet in those ways. Some of it you have to learn on the job. Like being a YouTuber, you gotta learn on the job. But for everything else that I've learned, ouch. For everything else that I've learned, came from this man, right here. I learned how to be a better leader, not just because I needed to do it for myself, but because, since I believe we had a wake for him literally either the day before or the day after my birthday. But, I did it not just for myself, but I also did it so that I could make myself proud in the goal of making him and my friend group with him proud. Because, for me personally, the most important thing when it comes to leadership is being able to put your head down on the bed at night and know that you've done everything in your power to do as much as you can with as little or as much as you have available, and being sure that you can sleep comfortably, knowing that you made good decisions and good outcomes and that you tried and you did your best. For me, concerning the example of Once Human, those are people that in that game I could have converted into stream watchers if I wanted to be cantankerous and more contemptuous enough. If I wanted to be a manipulative person, I could have been able to change the situation for the better. But at the same time, some of those people, I don't want them to have anything to do with me. Especially not the Eris motherfucker. But at the same time, does that mean that I have to be the way that some people could frame a person who could be an upset shitter could be? No. But of course it comes down to leadership. So, they were trying to light me up earlier in that chat room, and I just told them, like, bro, nobody fucking cares. Like, we're so far past this. I asked questions about what we were doing, and you guys are getting upset. Move the fuck on yourselves. It's hard to do that. It's much easier to go back and forth. And part of leadership is knowing when you shouldn't do that. Another part of that is knowing when you should rehash or when you shouldn't rehash. Me, I try to keep it focused on making examples. Because it's easier to work from an example of something that you could do or you shouldn't do than not. Because this is a wheel that you could talk about endlessly. Look at how long we've been talking about it for now. This is something you can talk about endlessly. This is a perfect thought experiment on whether or not to test yourself. Because if you do this, you are actually capable of doing it. If you never think about this, seek therapy immediately. You might have the sociopathy strain in you. And if you never think about this at all, and you see people never think about this at all, and they're like, bro, I don't give a damn, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this, because bro, it's just money at the end of the day. I'm trying to get my rent, I'm trying to get my money up. I'm trying to be broke, bro. I'm trying to drop bands and shit. That's a sign of a person that has already given up the goat. And once they've given up that fucking goat, they can't get that shit back. They're gone. They're lost to behavior cycle. You have to physically and mentally break them down to build them back up again. And most people are not worth that, in my opinion. However, I've talked enough. It's a fun thought experiment. And it's a very necessary thing you should do, because this is all a part of shadow work, by the way. For those who don't know, shadow work literally just means shadow work. Definition. We'll use a keybook definition. A type of psychotherapy that involves examining the hidden parts of the psyche, such as trauma, resentment, and limiting beliefs, known to working with the unconscious mind to uncover repressed aspects of oneself, with the term shadow self being refer to these certain parts of the personality. It's all about setting goals and boundaries for yourself, and how to be able to put yourself moving forward to become a better person. Because this applies to everything in society. There's never going to be a time where you don't need to know these things, and you don't need to know these things. Because it is better that you know them, so that when you see things happen, you know how to move in those situations. It doesn't matter when you start. You can do it, you can learn it and do it for anything. But, content time. We've got some things to go through before we get through the rest of the things. Starting off with a short video from Mentis Wave.
Specific propaganda tactic known as the basement strategy that people have been talking about lately. Because there is one really big misconception that a lot of people are having about it, which is this strange belief that it's a new strategy. Unfortunately, it's not new at all. It's actually a strategy that's been going on for a very long time. In fact, it's one of the oldest and most effective propaganda techniques in the book. But there's a very big catch. And to understand what that catch is, I'll just first go over what the basement strategy really is. It mainly refers to this strategy that the Democratic Party had during 2020, where they just kind of avoided showing Biden in any kind of uncontrolled situation. For example, if there's a town hall, then it's always just softball question after softball question after softball question. He was never really meaningfully pushed on any of the issues that the DNC might actually have difficulty answering, such as the fact that their money printer go burr strategy has historically always made things worse. Or for instance, how exactly he's going to take on Big Pharma and implement some kind of new public healthcare option when Dems are just as in bed with the Big Pharma lobby as Republicans, if not more. Or if there's a debate, then it's only one debate. Or if there's some kind of press conference, well then it's only ever with journalists who are loyal to the party. So again, just softball question after softball question. And just in general, the public appearances are kept to a bare minimum. While on the other side of the equation, the mainstream corporate media will then just go on to regularly publish various papers saying what great of a person Joe Biden is. What a wonderful, kind-hearted man he is.
This is basically the exact element of what I was talking about yesterday when I was talking about dragged Kamala into having to do debates. Because it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And when the devil that you've been told that you already know is actually not anything even in comparison to the devil that you didn't know but now you're learning about, it makes it very easy for people to associate that simple choice of what's better for your outcomes. Especially if you're talking about who's going to be a person in a position of power over you, like the president of the free country.
How he's going to return everything to normalcy, whatever that may be, etc., etc. So the basic idea of the basement strategy here is to greatly reduce the chances of a political figure having a gaffe by reducing or controlling all of their appearances, almost as if they're, you know, keeping him in the basement, hence why people have started calling it the basement strategy, while at the same time their corporate media allies just run propaganda mill for them, ensuring that the name of the political candidate is basically praised up to the heavens. Now, this is where the misconception comes in. A lot of people thought that the reason they were doing the basement strategy for Biden was simply because he was senile. The Dems wanted to hide the fact that Biden was in cognitive decline, and so they implemented this simple yet straightforward and effective less is more strategy. Show less of Biden while the journalist side of the cathedral sings its praise, and drum him up like he's some kind of savior that's going to protect America from the end of democracy at the hands of the evil fascist Trump. Now, there is some truth to that. I mean, hiding the fact that Biden was in cognitive decline is definitely a reason to not really show very many appearances of Biden, where he could potentially screw up. But the unfortunate truth is, this is only part of the story. The real question comes in how they got away with the basement strategy, and that question is
realistically, people get away with the basement strategy of hiding themselves away if they can be able to avoid controversy, which is why most content creators, when it comes to making businesses stay out of controversy so that there's not bad press bombing through the name. Because nothing kills a brand deal faster than bad press.
Answer by understanding how this tactic really works, because it's actually a lot more sinister than most people realize. And an easy way to see just how bad it is to ask ourselves, where have we seen this tactic before? Well, let's go over the checkboxes. The political appearances are always controlled so that they don't have to engage on the hard issues. These appearances are always scheduled, highly limited, and access is always restricted to party loyalists. And when they do happen, the appearances are carefully crafted to produce the best optics possible, or their dear leader must not be seen in any way that makes the public masses see them in any kind of ill light. Definitely can't have that happening. Meanwhile, media coverage is overwhelmingly positive, littered with feel-goodisms, praise, and the mistakes and failures of the party are never questioned or even brought up, as the propaganda machine turns on and on, generating a cult of personality. Yep, that's right. It's exactly the strategy used by dictators of extreme authoritarian regimes, such as Joseph Stalin, or a more modern example, Kim Jong-un. Does the North Korean media ever require Kim Jong-un to answer to the rumors of any of his crimes? Or how about the brutality of the laws put in place by his family that he continues to practice? No, obviously, of course not. The media and the state in the North Korean regime are one and the same. They obviously are not going to report anything negative, and on the contrary, have every incentive to ensure that such negativity is actively suppressed. The dear leaders of these regimes are obviously never going to be pressured by their own media system, of which they share a power structure with. And in the extremely rare circumstances when it does look like they are being pressured, it's simply being staged, because the dear leader will always have some kind of perfect hand response ready, as any kind of questions that the media will have for the dear leader are always agreed upon in advance. In other words, the basement strategy is therefore just the logical conclusion of what happens when the state and the media become one. It is a scam designed to control the minds of the masses that is as old as human civilization. Just look at the deification and worship of pharaohs back in ancient Egypt. By limiting and controlling the exposure of the leader to the masses, the people can then be easily fooled into thinking that everything's great, because by not really knowing what it is their dear leader stands for, while at the same time being told how great their dear leader is, this effectively tricks the people into psychologically projecting what they believe to be good onto the dear leader. And so they get brainwashed into thinking that their dear leader is always good based on what they believe to be good, instead of basing these beliefs upon any kind of objective facts that can be disproven. And the truth is, it's all just smoke and mirrors. And that's why the DNC is pulling the exact same basement strategy with Kamala Harris now, limiting exposure, avoiding Trump, all while the media sings her praises. And while the DNC doesn't have quite the stranglehold on the mainstream media as, say, the Workers' Party of Korea has on North Korean media, the Democrats have realized that they do have just enough control to be able to pull this off. And that's what people should really be talking about. The main weakness of this basement strategy, as it's being called, is that it kind of stops working if everybody realizes that the fact that the basement strategy can be done is proof that the state and the media have become one and the same. And therefore,
It's more like when everybody realizes that they have the ability to say, hey, wait a minute, what y'all motherfuckers doing? It immediately stops working. So when a content creator sees another content creator in a space, YouTubers that are commentary based are really great for this. When a content creator sees that another content creator has made some kind of attitude, some kind of gaffe, some kind of basis that allows them to demonstrate something, it makes it so that if Mahler wanted to pass through another content creator's content and start talking to them, they have the ability to bring the attention to the issue that they want discussed, because there will be people who will be interested in hearing that person's opinion. But if, say for example, in the middle of a sentence, upon explaining something, he's like, I don't know that much about it. Hold on, let me call in someone that knows better about this. And he gets on the phone and he dials Jay, who then gets on the phone to dial me, and we both go to where he is. It is the ability to bring that attention and focus that attention where you believe it should be, which in itself is a form of power. Remember, kids, when your brain gets bigger, your mind flowers, and it's great to learn, because knowledge is power. And realistically, the basement strategy is restricting access to knowledge. It's restricting access to information, specifically. It's restricting access to things that should be answered, things that should be addressed, things that should be focused, things that should be praised, things that should be discussed. The job of the journalist, effectively. Deciding for you what's an important question and the venue upon which to ask it. Then controlling the venue and your access to that level of power before they slice through your hand.
or any logical, intelligent person should be rejecting all of this positive coverage of Kamala Harris we're seeing as nothing more than just obvious propaganda claptrap that can and should be dismissed by any rational person. In other words, what we're seeing here is just objective proof that various outlets like MSNBC or CNN or ABC or CBS have effectively just become DNC propaganda mouthpiece. So them going with this strategy is just undeniable proof that higher ups both within the DNC party and these media organizations are obviously meeting behind closed doors in order to agree upon what the narrative is going to be. It's not even just the cathedral at this point. They're just blatantly meeting with each other to agree on the narrative now. Because otherwise the basement strategy is too risky. It doesn't work unless the state party knows for a fact that enough people in the media are going to play along. And that's what people should really be pointing out. The fact that they're even trying to do this is just proof of DNC and corporate media corruption. And thus the basement strategy is just an extension of the state media proxy problem. And the extreme praise of Kamala Harris that we've been seeing from these outlets is just the expected outcome of these corrupt power structures. I mean, heck, she doesn't even have policy proposals on her website. It's again just a bunch of nonsensical feel-goodisms. If these media institutions that were singing her praises were even slightly honest, they would at the very least call this buffoonery out. But of course they are not honest, so here we are. That's really all it is. And that's why this video is just a quick rant. It's not some amazing new strategy that the Dems have come up with. It's just that when a state party gains a certain level of control over what the media is allowed to say, this kind of clownery just becomes the most efficient tactic available. Anyways, that's all. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, you can support me on Ko-Fi or Subscribe Star by buying some merch. Until next time.
This then leads directly into something that's actually come up and is pretty interesting. 1 second. Ouch, my knee. That's an interesting thing that I need to show you first. And that conversation is actually extremely good because this actually blends into the stuff currently being had about the Kamala Harris campaign and what Aiden Ross just did with Donald Trump with his live stream. So Aiden Ross, I believe right now he's streaming on Kick. Yeah, he's streaming on Kick. So Aiden Ross streams on Kick, and he actually got to do a live stream with Donald Trump for like an hour and 20-ish minutes. Immediately after that happened, they tried to tap Kai Cenat to pull him to talk about Kamala Harris.
Be in a penthouse in New York. Then on top of that, I got the fucking Secret Service calling me 5 times, nigga! I don't know goddamn shit about politics, my nigga. I don't know nothing. Hey, I'm gonna keep it a stack. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I don't give a fuck. Okay? Listen, I had a bad bitch that I've been trying to get on for like the last 3 years, the last 2 years that I haven't spoke to in like a year. I haven't spoke to this girl in so goddamn long who gonna have the audacity to text me, "We need you a part of the campaign." At first I was thinking she was talking about like a game, a video game, like a Modern Warfare game, or some shit. Or if not that, a clothing brand. I'm like, what campaign? Shorty gonna say, you're not gonna get into details. Say it right now. If there's some way, somehow, something was to go into where I do the stream of politics, I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm going to sit on my stream and say, why did you guys call me? Like, I don't know. I've never did anything with politics. And these
Oh, shit.
be in a penthouse in my stream and say, why did you guys call me? Like, I don't know.
And then, comparatively, him just having fun with Trump. This right here is a perfect case example of why what I said is important. Because, really at the end of the day, I'm supposed just to be a guy, We're just supposed to be people. We're not supposed to be the kind of people that people can try and tap for media appearances. To try and improve the attention span of another person that should matter. Because you know what that reminds you of? I know what it reminds me of. It reminds me of when Ocasio-Cortez chose to try and tap multiple streamers, from Pokimane to others, to play fucking Among Us. That's what it reminds me of, because it's the exact same shit. Now that's not to say that you don't have people who are clearly using platforms like Twitch or make content that's political in nature on a platform like Twitch or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or anywhere else where microblogging platforms can be found and sold, especially in places that used to be locked behind a Patreon Subscribestar Discord tier and a privated invite-only Substack or invite-only Tumblr. But this is the same element of what happened then. This is the next voting cycle's Pokemon Go to the polls. And bro, the streaming world is chaotic enough. Trying to tap a member of the WL community because you need to try and platform yourself, hoping that you can try to get the urban vote in a place like New York City from Kai Cenat of all places. What the fuck? Are you mad, blood? Are you mad, blood? Blood, are you cooked in the cerveza, bro? Do you not understand, man? They don't They don't care. They don't care about your politics, bruv. It's wild. It's wild. Because, you know, streamer goes on air, talks to celebrity, stream blows up. IShowSpeed shows up at WrestleMania, gets fucking slammed by Randy Orton's finisher, and then husked away before the next match, stream blows up. I'm not upset or annoyed. It's just what happens. But it's also funny in this situation because imagine how desperate you have to be to try and tap Tyson at for the Kamala Harris campaign. Why would he vote for your shit? Why do you think he's gonna jump at that? What gave you the implication to believe that he would take that deal? Pokimane would take that deal, but she's no longer gonna work on Twitch. She's caring more about having control over the industry, like she talked about when she was molding, coping, and sealing in her live stream with that last thing that happened concerning Mina Cookies, because she got pushed back. Why the fuck would guys not team up with Kamala Harris? That's like expecting me to do a Taco Bell brand deal where I promote the Ku Klux Klan. Do you like ranch and white sauce in your tacos? Well, get ready to ride again through the South with our new hickory spice ranch sauce, only from Taco Bell. Wipe out! like, bro. Even for the purpose of a meme of jokes, like, bro, it's some of the fakest shit in existence. Like, who? Like, who? Like, who? Anyways. This then leads us into probably the biggest news. Which is this. The destruction of the MrBeast media empire. Since Phase 5 dropped today, I'm probably going to not watch these in their entirety because I want to play it once human. Itchy. My ear is itchy. My ear is itchy. Itchy. But I will go over the timeline of the story. If I can stop coughing. Sorry. Dogpack 404, along with another person, is a former employee of the MrBeast brand. And him and this other person, who I had on my timeline feed, I don't know where the fuck his video went. That's right here. Jake Weddle.
This maybe gets taken down. I hope
These two are people who have dropped a total of, I guess, 3-4 videos detailing an experience with the MrBeast brand. All of the news, of course, this technically more coming from the energy of this being brought up by the Nick Perks team as they dug into Ava Tyson. And from Ava Tyson being exposed for having associations with Shadman, because they bought an artwork of theirs that they hung up in their home like a presentation, among other things, led to the story pivoting from Ava Tyson to MrBeast, the brand, to MrBeast, the content creator and individual, Jimmy himself. In this situation, it is accurate to use Jimmy's name, because Jimmy and Ava and anybody else who's tied to the MrBeast brand is one of the examples of a perfect case example of why there is a difference between a person and a persona. The business of something like MrBeast, somewhere in my timeline, I'm gonna go find it real quick. The element of interest to the timeline when it comes to the involvement of something like MrBeast comes down to the element of understanding what it is exactly that you need to be interested in, you need to understand. In my opinion, and I believe one of my mutuals actually agree with me on this. I think it was Christina who said it. Boop, boop. Looking for the thread. Looking for the thread. Looking for the thread. I'm looking for the thread. I'm looking for the thread. I'm looking for the thread. I can't seem to find it. Perhaps it was Maw. It was somebody on my timeline. I knew it. I knew it for a fact. It was somebody on my timeline. Yeah, it would be this. This particular one. Dogpack 4-4. Put into the filler. Crop on the timeline. For some reason that crop is not right. Why is that crop not right? Anyways. This particular tweet in question, where basically Mr. Beast is at a level where he's too big to fail. But I would argue that an expose of something like this on this particular level, a lot of these notes being summarized for you to consume and watch through Upper Echelon, who's been making banger after banger after banger on the topic, which is one of the reasons why I didn't do it myself. This is one of those examples, and these are one of these moments inside of YouTube history where you have enough of an argument that you could see a content creator trigger a series of laws that make it so that a person can be deplatformed and removed from business for the purposes of protecting people because of the bad outcomes that they're causing through the actions that they're willing to do at the mercy of other people. It's a very, very big thing that can happen because of the Mr. Beast situation. In all the parts of YouTube history and YouTube law that has gone in the books, I would argue that Nick Rekieta and Mr. Beast, as the organization as the single entity, is one of the many examples where if you make enough stink about this and you make enough of an argument about this, you could actually be able to make laws in the book that would probably pass through government, and there's nothing we'd be able to do about it because it literally falls under the category of business abuse. When you talk about a person who runs a business on YouTube, potentially scamming people out of money, making up fake gambling, making up opportunities for fake giveaways and rewards, or changing the terms of a giveaway and a reward to fleece you out of your money, you're talking about better business bureau practices that leads to sanctions that should be put on people beyond what has ever been done through an adpocalypse. Doesn't matter if it's about merch, doesn't matter if it's about subs, doesn't matter if it's about giveaways. This is a giant story that is definitely going to be one of the biggest of this year. And there have been already big enough stories. There's already been plenty of content creators that have been exposed for their actions and still potentially could be exposed for their actions. But ultimately, with Nick Rekieta, I'm of the opinion that it should happen because for his story and his situation, I don't care how it happens. If a YouTuber has a person get involved in their care as a child, and they are their guardian and reward, and they are getting fucked up on drugs, it is necessary that that information be submitted to the platforms where they are streaming, and it be made public of record, simply because you need to have it on public record. I don't believe in sealing things and hiding things. I believe people in society need to hear and see what needs to be said and done, and not just be closed off to the kind of trials and grand jury hearings where they can only be able to tell you what happened through somebody who was in the room painting what a person was saying on stand. But also, we live in a digital age where people will refuse and deny information unless it's irrefutable. So you do have to crip walk and curb stomp it a little bit, if not a lot, especially depending on how aggressive it is. But especially in the case of somebody who's too big to fail, it has to be that. Because the only way you make something that's too big to fail is by removing their ability to pretend that what's happening isn't happening. Gaslighting at an all-time high. And if the stories work out and the situation reveals itself to be what it is, and it very much seems to be this way, at least based on what I've read and what I've seen, and what I've looked into and continue to research and look into, not only does it look like Jimmy did it, not only does it look like the MrBeast brand very much is what many people said it would be. I guess shoutouts to those particular leftists that were hating him before it was cool. But the worst part is apparently, at the end of the day, they were also protecting an actual registered sex offender. And he knew, because he employed him. Did he ever explain the aftermath of the Mario Nafal lawsuit? I was really hoping he'd win that. Upper echelon Mario Nafal. N-A-N-A-W-F-A-L. I don't think he has. The last thing that I see is a part 9 about the lawsuit. I don't know. I'm gonna look into it and I'll tell you, and I'll find out and tell you later. But all of the stories between this video, and this video amount to me that the evidence is so overbearing that I don't see a way how this does not look like what it fucking looks like. So, use this information at your will. But we will watch this before I switch over to gaming. And then remember, the versus chat happens it starts strictly at 6 p.m. I will be hanging out in the voice chat before it happens. Probably starting to hang out there at like 4 p.m. But until that happens, I will be playing Once Human and or Path of Exile on and off on the gaming back end. But let's start with this. Let's go.
Alright, before you watch this, if you haven't already, press pause. What I'm discussing today is predicated on ex-employee testimony from a man named Jake Weddle, who worked at MrBeast in 2019 and 2020, who's just now done a public interview about his experiences at the company, posted by Dogpack404. I'm going to link to both of their channels down below in the description, as well as that newest video, and I encourage everyone to go watch it. It's pretty powerful stuff. It contains a lot of very serious allegations, and it's the basis for what I want to focus on right now, so it's a good thing to go watch that before you click resume. I'll do a short summary, of course, but that video has vocalized a few things that really need to be seen in proper context. So again, there's a new video from Dogpack404 interviewing former MrBeast employee Jake Weddle, and it deserves to be seen. Okay, assuming that all of you watching here forward have seen that video, I'm going to go out on a limb here and also assume that you'll fully understand why my tone is about to shift. The stuff that this company has done is disgusting, and I'm starting to hold a personal belief here that some degree of complicity is flat out required. Otherwise, we would never actually be in this horrible situation. I'll do a short form summary here for those that need it, but I can't say this firmly enough. You need to watch the actual interview. It's rather emotional at times. It contains testimony that until now never received proper attention, and it raises serious questions about ethics and behavior. But yeah, here's a quick summary. Jake Weddle is a former MrBeast crew member and camera personality who participated in multiple skits and videos about 4 to 5 years ago. His role was somewhat secondary, taking part in pranks or challenges where he would directly fake his reactions and play into the jokes as best he could. But it wasn't until after he was let go from the company, let go because he attempted to negotiate better pay and benefits for himself and one other employee, that things got really bad. Jake was offered an opportunity that they pitched to him as some sort of easygoing luxury vacation type challenge where he would be spending 100 days in isolation. He was told they needed roughly 30 days to actually make the video, 30 days of footage, and he was chosen because he remained on relatively good standing with the company after departure. That's the game, by the way. Play nice, and maybe Jimmy gives you a chance to dance with the camera and shove a little money up your asshole. But this challenge,
Which is heinous, by the way. And it's the reason why it starts legitimizing, I need water for 1 second, it starts legitimizing all the concerns people had about whether there was actual abuse going on, or for a bunch of fucking leftists being jealous that he has money and they don't, was just that. Them molding that he's rich and they're not. Because that is the purest, I would say most abusive form of content creation. Because it's one thing to say, we're going to do content together, we're going to play a video game, or we're going to do content together, we're going to watch something. And then I'm going to come up with an idea, and I'm going to come back and tell you about that idea, and then we're going to execute that idea. It's another thing entirely to ask a former employee who has no affiliation or reason to listen to what you have to say that, hey, you play nice and you suck my dick and you lick my balls and you make sure to swallow, and maybe I give you a platform opportunity to make yourself into a new content creator. That level of pay-to-play experience is the kind of shit that I hate. All people hate it because it's inherently a form of nepotism.
went decidedly horribly wrong. The video itself never got released because the conditions they subjected him to were inhumane. For the sake of content, they put this man in a room with an ice cream machine and a hot tub and fluorescent lights with fresh paint, but they never turned the lights off. Never. The ice cream machine would either bombard him with never-ending noise or assault his sense of smell with mildew and dairy mold, while the hot tub began to stink very quickly because it was never hooked up to a proper filtration system. Small complaints, you might say. Some of you definitely will say that in the comment section, but when losing access to the sun, Jake lost access to his circadian rhythm. He experienced acute insomnia, which may even be the root cause for future insomnia that he then experienced. And with no access to clocks, he became the guy in the cage for content, where Jimmy would occasionally drop by and ask him to say things like, "Thank you for the money, now I can pay my student loans," so he would appear more grateful for the camera. There's a lot of very, very personal testimony he gives, and honestly, I just wouldn't do it justice by summarizing, but the end result is that he would face a tremendous amount of pressure to conform. Mr. Beast was spending a ridiculous amount of money on the set, he was spending a ridiculous amount of money on equipment, and labor, all for the sake of a video, which would recoup those losses if it was entertaining enough, thereby leaving Jake as the one very human keystone point of failure in the media machine. The pressure to conform was palpable, even to a point where he was told that one of the smaller challenges was running a literal marathon on a treadmill, and he tried, to the detriment of his own body. The result is quite honestly tragic, but again, you should hear these things from him, not some other YouTuber summary. His testimony speaks to something a lot of us already felt in our bones, we just didn't have the evidence of it. Mr. Beast, in my opinion, is ruthlessly exploitative, but towards the end of the video we get something else, something alarming, and something that happens to synchronize in one of the worst ways possible with prior revelations about Beast employee behavior. Jake Weddle, when asked about .pdf files at the company, if you know what I mean, disclosed that a staff member named Delaware was actually a convicted, I'm not actually gonna say it, I'll just show it on screen. The victim was between 1 and 11 years old. This is where it gets tricky. My role here is not to witch hunt a specific employee of Mr. Beast who may not even work at the company anymore, though his address is still listed as Greenville, North Carolina in the registry, which is also where Beast Holdings LLC is located. The crime was committed 14 years ago. I'm not plastering his face and address all over a YouTube video at the height of what seems like online rage on the subject. If you wanted to find those details, you could. I'm not really able to deprive anyone of that outcome, but I'm certainly not going to actively participate in it. However, what we learned from the Jake Weddle interview has pretty intense implications on a broader level, and that's where I want to put my focus. This man, referred to as Delaware, is not actually named Delaware. It's his nickname because he allegedly couldn't go back to the state of Delaware as a result of his crimes. However, Mr. Beast allowed this man to not only be employed at the company, a company that psychologically targets and manipulates children, with children on set and frequently participating in videos. He also allowed this man to compete in challenges while wearing a mask, as they gave him a new nickname, or should I say alias, Zorro. Bear with me. During the I spent 24 hours straight in Insane Asylum video, in which Mr. Beast did not spend 24 hours in any such thing himself, Zorro is a main contestant. However, at 9 minutes and 12 seconds, Mr. Beast himself states, "Don't touch Delaware's cracker," during one of the joking meals that they were given. That simple, innocuous slip presents a very big problem. If Jake Weddle's testimony is accurate, which I believe it is, having compared the height of Delaware, or Zorro, to that of Chandler, as well as eye color, hair color, weight, facial features, etc., it all checks out. If Jake Weddle's testimony is accurate, it means that not only was there a convicted offender working at Mr. Beast, convicted of explicit acts with a victim under the age of 11, by the way, but his nickname was the state in which those crimes occurred, which Mr. Beast himself openly used, simultaneously allowing him to compete in challenges with a mask on, presumably to hide his identity, under yet another alias, seemingly to obfuscate who he was. See the problem? It's a complicated situation, but I want to make something very clear. I am not the arbiter of who should and shouldn't be allowed to find work or employment. I don't know the full extent of the situation, but I don't think that someone would have known and joked about.
I would argue that it's not complicated. It's extremely simple. It shows some of the most 3 credible things you need to be able to assign and assuage blame: knowledge, acknowledgement of knowledge, and the consent of all people involved. Because those are the requirements necessary for a conspiracy. I would say this is out of the realm of a conspiracy theory and is just a confirmed conspiracy and attempt to conspire and plot for content. But I cut you off. I'm gonna let you finish.
But I want to make something very clear. I am not the arbiter of who should and shouldn't be allowed to find work or employment. I don't know the full extent of the situation, but I don't think that someone with a known and joked about criminal past of that nature should be a notable person with authority and influence on a YouTube channel with tens of millions of underage followers at the time that targets and psychologically exploits children deliberately as their primary audience demographic. That seems like a bad fit.
And I felt kind of bad, so I invited them to our warehouse, and surprisingly, they followed me. Don't follow strangers' kids.
Just to emphasize this, working at Mr. Beast makes you a celebrity to children. You have fans, underage fans, by nature of the very job itself, especially if you participate on camera. Delaware participated on camera, and this is where we need to connect the dots and use our context adult brains, because this no longer appears, in my opinion, to be a simple case where the employer has no idea of the background of the employee, and therefore can't really be held accountable for them as a proxy. Combine all of that with a propensity for the secret deletion of evidence, combine it with the Ava Chris Tyson scandal, combine it with everything else we've come to understand over the past few weeks, and I see something that is quite frankly horrifying. Circling back to my original point, if the world's largest influencer, he wasn't the largest at the time of all this, I suppose, but still tens of millions of followers and viral content every single time he posted. If one of the world's largest influencers is employing a man whose nickname is the state he can't go back to because of that particular type of crime, while the influencer jokingly uses that nickname, allows him to wear a mask on set with a code name of Zorro, and that influencer's best friend undergoes a viral scandal over the course of weeks, which involves controversial behavior in a Discord server with minors, a Discord server with the influencer who might also be a part of that, by the way, what exactly am I supposed to think here? What is a reasonable conclusion to draw? I've heard from a source that I have not verified completely as of just yet, full disclosure, claiming that Mr. Beast is directly hiring private investigators to find dirt on the people criticizing him. And while that's mostly relegated to a few central figures, he's allegedly doing this for the purpose of character assassination. If we start seeing crazy stuff come out now about everyone out there who's calling his media empire into question, well, in my mind that'd be pretty telling. Because so far the avenue available to him, the avenue where he just fucking apologizes and makes meaningful changes to the predatory structure of his company, seems to be the only avenue he's completely unwilling to go down. In Dogpack 404's video interviewing
Pretty much. Which, that goes back to what I said earlier. The element of leadership has to do with how the person acts when this information comes to light, rather than how they react when they believe everything is persona non grata. It is a scary factor to figure out how easily a person's personality can change based on things like social perception and money. Eso sí que es.
Jake Weddle, he read a particular paragraph from a document called How to Succeed in Mr. Beast Productions, titled No Does Not Mean No, which is a wild thing to have as corporate policy, emphasizing the intense pressure that contestants like Weddle would be subjected to routinely, and how the company chooses to build its own atmosphere. However, having been given access to that document for myself, I want to read a different paragraph. Quote, Own your mistakes. I hate excuses and I despise with my entire soul when people just try to save face instead of learn from how they mess up. Mistakes are okay. Genuinely they are, and I expect you to make a lot. That's perfectly fine. Every veteran here has cost me $1 million at one point or another, and you can go ask them yourself if I ever held it over their heads. The reason I'm okay with mess ups is because I know that's how you learn. I see it as me investing in you and your brain. Hence why I have zero tolerance for C players, and they must go immediately. Those mess ups could be done by an A player that will retain the information learned. I just beg you that you learn from every mistake and try not to repeat it.
What is a C player? I'm trying to read this because there's clearly a terminology basis that's here that I can't be able to understand. But there's something in this paragraph that I don't like. I hate excuses and despise with my entire soul when people just try to save face instead of learning from how they messed up. I can understand that. It's actually probably a fun and fair thing that I've made into a part of my content, that I make mistakes plenty, and there are plenty of times when people make mistakes as well. And from the experience of having done it, I can then try to lead people down a path that I took to learn how to do something. From video games to life and more. But mistakes are okay, blah 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 blah. Every veteran here has cost me $1 million at one point or another, and you can ask them yourself if I ever held it over your heads. The reason I'm okay with it, and because I'm okay with the fuck-ups, is because I know that's how you learn. I see it as me investing in you and your brain, which is why I have a zero tolerance policy for C players, and they must go immediately. That implies a lot. Because in that paragraph, in that particular section, the close parentheses, and I see it as me investing in you and your brain, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because how you view the person saying that directly affects how you view them saying that. If that makes sense, chat. For me, when he says that, I don't know, I hear boss music.
That's when it gets annoying. I've never, ever, ever once fired someone on the spot for messing up. You have nothing to be afraid of. Own stuff so we can address how to fix it and then move on. End quote. Those appear to be the words of Jimmy Donaldson, Mr. Beast himself. And I think it's more than fair to say them back to him now. Own your mistakes. Despising with your entire soul when people just try to save face instead of learning from how they messed up is fundamentally incompatible with the mass deletion of evidence regarding alleged illegal lottery streams, which the Mr. Beast social media team appears to be actively doing right now. Owning your mistakes does not mean manipulation of footage or lying about the competitive nature of your videos, and it certainly doesn't mean obfuscating the identity of a convicted registry offender so that they can work for a child-focused media company. The document contains very strong words from leadership, and I would hope that leadership can also abide by them. Own it. End of the day, I don't know where it all leads because the snowball isn't done rolling yet. There's more, not from me, mind you, more from the veritable army of non-disclosure-bound employees who up till now played nice for the sake of protecting their careers. YouTube's golden boy got very big and very powerful, but that only works when the armor you build is impenetrable. And right now, there is stuff piercing the armor. Again, me personally, I have a very small part to play here. I watch, I summarize, and I offer opinions on the much-appreciated bravery of company whistleblowers who are taking it upon themselves to expose and potentially dismantle the predatory media empire of the world's largest influencer. It's a heck of a story so far, and it's a heck of a story going forward. I guess we'll find out where it all leads. Do make sure to check out Jake Weddle, the original Dogpack video, and subscribe to both of them as well. But for right now, that's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. A special VPN deal, big discount there, merchandise, Patreon, and locals, monthly memberships, and more. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.
So, that in its entirety is more or less all you really need to know if you're not up to date on Mr. Beast. I could probably set aside time on another day if I wanted to do an entire breakdown of all the videos themselves for people who had context, but honestly, I don't want to do that because I think you should watch it yourself instead of just watching along with me. It's something that should be seen in its proper context, and I don't want to do bombastic Carl Reacts content. Because whatever I have to say should only come after it once other people have already seen it. So, go to those channels. That's Jake Weddle and Dogpack404. Watch all three of their videos. Watch anything else they have from. Like, subscribe, blah 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 blah. Algorithmic promotional things. And I'm gonna switch the content over now. Thank you, chat, for being who you are, and I will see you motherfuckers on the flip side.